So we have to talk a little bit about Nintendo right now because Nintendo has just announced price increases for the Switch 1. Yes, not the Switch 2, the Switch 1. And it is ridiculous with how much that the prices are for the Switch 1. So they have announced that all Nintendo Switch family of devices of the Switch 1 and accessories are going to be getting price increases and not the Switch 2. However, they specify that the Switch 2 could be raising prices also in the near future. So that just at the end of itself just basically tells you that Nintendo is going full on greed at this point. Now, a lot of people are basically saying, well, it's probably because of the tariffs, this and that. And it's just like, dude, like Nintendo is a giant corporation. They could literally eat some of the tariffs and still be making billions of dollars. And especially what makes it even more weird is the fact that you have an 8-year-old system that they are raising prices for when in the past console generations, except for this generation with the Switch 1 as well as the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, you notice that consoles usually drop in price over time, at least within the first 2 to 3 years, and then there will be a slim model that would usually come out and it would be a much cheaper product, and it would be like, let's say, $150 cheaper than what the base console was when it first came out. So like if you look back at the PlayStation 4 generation, the PlayStation 4 original model launched at $400, and then 3 years later, the Slim model comes out and it was $100 cheaper, basically selling for $300. And the same thing was with the PlayStation 3. So in previous console generations, this is what we have lived through. But for some reason, this console generation at the end of itself, with the Nintendo Switch 1, the PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, it's apparently going the opposite direction. And it's just eventually, at this point, it's truthfully going to be killing gaming, or at least I should say, it's going to personally kill console gaming at the end of itself. So, when we're talking about Switch 1 prices, we're talking the Switch Lite went from $200 to $230, and the original ordinary Switch went from $300 to $340. But this is the big one. The Switch OLED went from $350 to $400. So yeah, you want to get a Switch OLED, you're pretty much just going to be better off to getting a Switch 2 for literally $50 more. And that's honestly what we think about, or what we think that Nintendo is personally doing, is they're just trying to be like, oh dude, yeah, we have to raise prices for this, but hey, look at this, how bad it is. You might as well get the Switch 2. And that's what I think that Nintendo is truthfully trying to do at this point, is they're trying to make the Switch 2 look like a better piece of tech for almost a similar price point. And honestly, that's just crazy to really think about. So yeah, we're now living in a world that now consoles, apparently, no matter how old they are just apparently going to get price increases just out of the blue. And we're talking consoles that have been out for almost a decade at this point. Just think of that. A console that's been out for 8 years is going up in price. Like, how is that even possible? An outdated console that's going up in price. Like, you believe that? Like, Nintendo is just strictly going full on greed at this point. That's literally what they are doing. So, yeah, the Nintendo Switch 1 to family of devices is going to go up. Games and accessories like the Pro controllers are now going up to $80. And if you think back at what happened with Microsoft just a couple of months ago, they announced price increases for their first party games. And guess what? 2 months, month and a half later, like in July is when it was, middle of July, they announced that they were falling back on price points because it did not meet their expectations. And what I heard is it was something to do with the pre-orders for the Outer Worlds 2. The pre-orders did not live to the hype because of the $80 price point. And that's what I think that made Microsoft basically go back and be like, okay, we have to go back on our prices. And Nintendo just has not even done that either. So Nintendo is just full on greed because of their success with the Switch 1, and they're just going to get worse at this point. Now, a lot of people are going to be saying, like I said, the tariffs and whatnot, but that's just no excuse to literally blame an old 8-year-old console and be like, okay, yeah, we have to charge a good, like, 15-20% more on this system that is literally outdated and has been outdated for pretty much the last 3 to 4 years. Like, yeah, the Switch 1 has literally been outdated for like the last 3 to 4 years, since like 2021. So you're telling me that an outdated console is worth more money? Like, no, that's just full on greed. And I can almost guarantee you that Nintendo is like 100% lying. Nintendo is absolutely lying because they want to try to make it nickel and dime every single dollar and penny that they can get out of you. And that's exactly what they are doing. So the Nintendo Switch 1 is basically going up in price, and there's just no other way to describe it. They just announced the prices going up, and honestly, I think it's the most stupidest, greediest thing that Nintendo has ever been, and it's even worse than the $10 price increase of their games going to $80. That's honestly worse, especially when you look at a Switch OLED for $400, and yet you could get a brand new Switch 2 that's going to be mostly backwards compatible with Switch 1 games and play the new Switch 2 games that you can get only for just $50 more. So, yeah, Nintendo has officially went full on greed mode at this point. So, let us know in the comment section down below of your thoughts on how you feel about Nintendo raising prices for the Nintendo Switch 2, and just let us know what you think about Nintendo raising its prices. But that's going to pretty much wrap it up for this video for today. So hope you enjoyed the video. If you could, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and be sure to leave us a comment down below. And we will see you in the next one. Tech and Gaming Reviews, signing out.